And we are live.
Hey, everybody, it's Dale Jr. Thanks for tuning in to Ask Junior here in the Bojangles studio. Andrew has your questions ready to go. Thanks for supporting us here at Dirty Mo Media and everything we do. This is our Tuesday show. We'll have this out later today. And tomorrow we're going to have Scott Dixon as our guest, so tune in for that. But let's get it started.
Yeah, this first one is coming from Ryan. If social media were around in the early 2000s, how do you think you would use it?
Oh, man. Probably about the same. Probably the same, but you remember when we first started using social media, it was like, hey, this is what I have for lunch. Here's my dog. Silly stuff, right? Just dumb things. Everyday, normal life. We don't do any of that no more, right? We're like, it's got to be
Throwback Thursday.
Oh yeah,
remember that stuff?
Couldn't miss a Thursday.
Right.
Couldn't wait till Thursday.
Yeah.
Had it all lined up. All
Yeah.
the throwbacks you were going to post. I think there would be a lot more of that had we done this, 20 years or 10 years before. We would have been even sillier.
Yeah, like all the cheesy trends.
Cheesy.
Yeah.
Super cheesy. Yeah.
How do you think you would document just like yourself as a up-and-coming race car driver? You think it would be the same?
I think it would. Especially because when you're young, I think when you're young in your 20s and early 30s, you're seeking attention, seeking affirmation, seeking accomplishment, checking boxes, right? And social media helps you sort of climb these imagined ladders and give you that affirmation. Like, people. There'd be a lot of going on Twitter and going, man, that was a tough race. I'm sorry, I let everybody down. And only to get the reaction of, well, you'll get them next week. Okay, yeah, I feel good. I'm back together. And then there would be a lot of, seeking affirmation and just.
I could tell you this.
Yeah.
It would have been a treat for all of us to, if you think about Dale Jr.'s career back in the early 2000s with Anheuser-Busch and the amount of cool stuff you got to do. I mean, like if you would have think about ringside at an Arturo Gotti fight or, filming a Super Bowl commercial. Like to be able to have seen just kind of like behind the scenes of any of those things back in the AB days when they were at their height, when AB was just spending money, going to bars for appearances. Think about social media. But if we'd have had it back then, it would have been amazing.
Yeah. I guess so. I don't know, man.
You would have allowed it to become another source of anxiety.
Probably.
For sure.
Yeah. But at the same time, think about it. Like, how much bigger things would have been had we've been able to really had that megaphone. Social media is this giant megaphone of this is where we are, this is what we're doing, this is what we're involved in today. And like you say, all the things that we did with Bud back in the day, even early with Rick when we went to drive at HMS, that having that much more reach would have made it even more massive than it was.
Yeah.
And man, 04.
Holy crap.
What a year.
Can you imagine the tweet from Dale where it's like, Tony Jr. is such a dick?
Yeah.
I would have never done that. Have I ever tweeted such language?
Yes.
That's not who I am. I've said an F-bomb here and there.
In 04 you would have.
I do F-bombs from time to time, but not anymore, really.
Yeah, well, if only we had a time machine, we would have seen what it would have been like. This next one coming from Tim Cruz. Who inspired you most growing up?
Huh.
I know it's a broad question.
That is. Dad was certainly driving a lot of decisions and inspiring me one way or another. I pulled for Jimmy Means, who was an independent. I thought it was cool that he, worked as hard as he did with it was just fun probably not fun for him to work so hard, but it was really inspiring to see somebody work so hard with very little, while I knew at the same time everything that Dad and other teams had, right? I could see behind the curtain of Richard Childress and Dad and those guys that were winning races, And that made me really appreciate Jimmy and the independent more, because I could also know in detail what they were using and doing to race. And so I think that was good to have that balance of knowing what it was like to be on that other side. One of my best friends, Brad Means, Jimmy's son, he was pretty transparent with me on some of the struggles they had and the things they had to do to compete. And so it really made me appreciate that.
Last week we talked about, the MTV Music Awards. This question coming from William: what's the best concert you've been to?
Oh man, the best concert. It's always kind of like the last one, I guess. Some of the best concerts that you go to. I'm into pop music. So like the Dangerous Summer was a good one. I went to a Pine Grove concert that sounded really good. Wonder Years, but that's some of the recent stuff. Lord Huron, been to a couple of their concerts. That's really good. Way, way back in the day, my very first concert was Moody Blues in Chicago.
Really?
Yeah, and that was really good. 16 years old. I remember going to see Alanis Morissette and live, the band live. And I remember very vivid moments during those concerts where I was like, this sounds and is incredible. This is awesome. So I went to see Primus, Green Day, way back in the 90s.
You ever done a mosh pit?
Oh, yeah.
You did?
Several times.
Oh, my God. Yeah. I would love to see that.
I used to wear Airwalks and baggy pants. I had this phase when it was like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, and then Primus and Green Day and all that good stuff back in the late 90s. So yeah.
First show in Chicago. What brought you there?
Huh?
You said the first show was in Chicago.
No, the band.
Oh, the band Chicago. Oh.
Andrew.
I'm sorry.
Oh my goodness.
I'm still.
It was in Charlotte.
Yeah.
Got it.
I don't know. It was the Blockbuster Pavilion back then.
Yeah.
It's I think the Verizon.
I bet it's not
Theater.
Blockbuster anymore.
I don't know what it is now. Yeah.
Do you ever hear like songs from the band Chicago and like does it take you back to that first concert?
The Moody Blues, Nights in White Satin. I remember when they sang that at that concert, and I didn't really I didn't know this music when I was 16.
Yeah,
I'd heard it, but you go to, this is what I do. I go to a concert, and man, I'm obsessed with that band from that moment on, and I listened to Nice and White Satin a lot after that.
Yeah,
and which is kind of strange. I mean, I was into, I guess when I was 16, I was probably into Poison and Motley Crue and all that stuff. We always wearing those T-shirts in school. But I'd ride around in my truck and pop in a little Nights in White Satin. I was probably the only one in my school doing that.
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
But we were riding around just this week, and I hit a Chicago song. And man, we hit the wave. We had to go dial in some more Chicago.
Yeah.
Underrated. I know that they're a big band and everything, but I don't think they get the attention they deserve. That's a good thing. They got some good songs, man.
Oh yeah.
I'm definitely gonna have to check them out after this for sure.
Yeah. I had like a 8-month stretch when I was in military school. I listened to nothing but Boston.
Oh, I remember you said that.
I have no idea how that happened.
Yeah. I had the same thing go with me with ABBA.
I heard that. Oh, really?
Yeah.
I was in the dorm. I was in the dorm in military school, and somebody was playing it out of their room, and I was like, I like that. That's good. And so they gave me a tape, and man, I wore that thing out. I was like, it's all good.
Boston, not the location, Andrew. It's a band.
Yeah. I'm all caught up now. All right, I think we have time for one more. Did you ever? This one's coming from Kelly. Did you ever name your cars?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You remember some of them? What was your favorite one that you named?
We had one called Mach 5. We had one called East Coast Drifter. Everybody remembers Amelia.
Yeah.
That's right, Amelia.
Yeah.
We had the red-headed stepchild, which was our short track car with a drop snout, and we won a lot of races with that in 1998, 99.
Red-headed stepchild.
Yeah. It was. got the Gossamer car. We called that car Gossamer. That we won one race with it, raced it once and dominated. So yeah, naming cars is fun. The thing is today, the car that the old Sundrop car that I raced in the 90s that we've sort of brought back for the Cars Tour at North Wilkesboro, that car was Ralph. It just had Ralph on the roll bar. And so when you look at the car today that I raced at Wilkesboro last year and will race again, it's got Ralph right
It's
there.
Ralph again.
Yeah, it is Ralph again. Ralph is back. The naming cars was a lot of fun and almost a must when you raced the car enough, right? When you took that car and ran it for a year or more, you would develop this sort of track record of performance and behaviors.
Yeah.
That car was tight in the middle always, or really loose in, and whatever those behaviors that this car seemed to have would sometimes determine the name. But when we started building new cars every month, and you would race, you'd race your 1.5 miles or short track car twice, and then sell it to the 51 team or sell it to someone else. These cars were being built and sold every 3 or 4 months. You couldn't name them. It was pointless to name them. They were going to be gone, right? You didn't want to develop this sort of appreciation attachment to it. But now I think with the current next gen car, it's possible the names could come back because these center cages could stick around for a long time, right? These teams could race these chassis or the basic nucleus of the chassis for a while. I always encouraged names for cars because you would have an attachment for it, and it just made you more invested. Yeah. Anything that invests you more emotionally and personally is a good thing.
I'd be curious to learn some of the backstories behind some of the names that you listed on.
Darrell Waltrip. Well, the East Coast Drifter was a car that we just ran everywhere. I have that car. I raced it in the 90s. I have it over my shop. I'm trying to restore it, but we just ran it everywhere. I ran it at East Carolina Motor Speedway, Hickory, Florence. It was just a throwaway. Nobody wanted it. I took it and fixed it up and raced it whenever we weren't running weekly at Myrtle Beach. So it was just, I liked the High Plains Drifter, Clint Eastwood movies and stuff like that. Yeah. So we call it the East Coast Drifter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, love that.
Andrew, I got a question for him. I know you were trying to end, but Denny said on his podcast that in 2004 or 2005, you tried to recruit him to come over to DEI. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
Did you really try to get him?
Oh, yeah. So me and Denny were hanging out a lot back then.
Yeah.
Remember Denny coming into the 2004 Victory Lane? We won Daytona. Yep. So Denny calls me. We were sim racing, and we were online, talking online, just joking and racing online almost every night with a big group of people. And the same group every night. We all hung out together. And so he calls me one day and he goes, "Hey man, I've got a meeting with Joe Gibbs to possibly get to drive his Xfinity car in Daytona, and I got nowhere to stay." And I said, "Come stay on the bus." So he spent the night on the bus like 2 or 3 nights during Speed Weeks for 2004. And so he had his meeting, and secretly, even then, I was like, man, I wish I could get him to come to DEI. I wish we were hiring him, not Joe Gibbs. But he goes and has his meeting, and he's like, "I guess I'm gonna go home." I was like, "Oh man, you ought to stay, man. What you have, Daytona 500." So I think he ends up spending the night. We win the race, and he goes to Victory Lane, and I hand him the trophy, and he carries the trophy back to the bus after we win, which we talked about before. So we had a pretty good friendship. He showed up the house one morning with McDonald's just unannounced. That type of friendship, right? And so I think, Richie Gilmore or somebody, or Ty Norris or somebody at DI was like, we should talk to him or see if he'd be interested in driving the 15 car. And so I went to him, and it was very brief. I was just like, "Hey man, I want you to know this is an opportunity available to you. I don't know what you're doing or how you feel about your future, where you're at, but I want you to consider it." And I could tell right away that he was pretty happy with where he was, feeling good about it, liked his responsibilities and the cars he was driving, and thought, man, I'm on a good track, right? I want to change. I don't want to make a change. I don't know what that would have done for DEI. Might have made a world of difference. Might not have made any difference at all. But he was a very good race car driver, and a lot of people were looking to try to land him. He talked about the '88 team. Robert Yates was trying to get him to come over at that same time. But yeah, I reached out to him, and I remember reaching out to him. We talked about it with Kyle Busch when Kyle was on the show. I stopped Kyle in the parking lot and was like, "Hey, man, don't know what you're doing, but we'd love to have you come drive for us." So back then, I was doing a little bit of scouting, not as much as I do these days. But
I guess the interesting part of that, and what probably people are thinking, is that you had a driver for the 15. And I remember when Michael was in here, and I think that I can't remember exactly the story, but he was talking about reading something in NASCAR scene maybe or whatever, but there was some uncertainty about his future, but he wasn't actually being told that. It's just, I guess I find it interesting that in 2004 or 2005, especially if it was 2005, when there was so much turmoil going on at DEI.
I wonder when exactly it was.
Yeah.
As far as what the timeline is, but yeah, I was asked to go see if he'd have any interest.
Just because of your relationship. It wasn't like you were out looking for people to come drive cars. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's all the time we have for this one today.
All right, y'all. Thank you for those questions. Thank you, Andrew. And thanks to Xfinity. They're a great partner of ours. Xfinity 10G.
Mm-hmm.
Man, they skipped a few. We talk about it.
They went right past the 7Gs,
Yeah.
8Gs, 9Gs. They went right from
10's
5G to 10G.
10's a damn lot. I mean, if it's,
They're the only ones
if
out
it's
there.
10
too.
gigs
Yeah.
up and down, that's a bunch. Anyways, just want to thank Xfinity. They're a great partner. I'm a customer and really enjoy their service. If you're looking to get some high-speed internet and you're not happy with what you got, check it out. I think you'll be happy with Xfinity. And again, thanks for supporting everything we do here at Dirty Mo Media. Our episode for this Tuesday will be out tonight. Again, Scott Dixon is our guest for tomorrow's episode. And don't forget our Thursday recap. Dirty Mo Doe with Steve Letarte coming out every Thursday. That is getting some great traction, getting some great feedback from that show. I've heard a lot of people talking about how fun it is to listen to Steve sort of handicap the field. They're learning a lot about the betting odds and all those things and what they mean. And I'm learning a lot as well because I'm not very up on all that terminology. But Steve's fun to listen to. Denny Hamlin getting incredible reviews for Actions Detrimental.
Yep. Out
every Monday. He's been working his tail off, runs that race at Auto Club, and then had his podcast out and available the next morning.
They taped that night.
Yep.
They stayed out in Arizona and taped.
Good job, Denny. And everybody really appreciates the effort you're putting in, and the feedback is showing it. Door Bumper Clear, those guys are hitting on all cylinders.
Speed Street also.
Yep.
Amazing. Look, hey,
Door Bumper Clear and Speed Street are in mid-season form.
Yeah, that's
I would
true.
say.
But Speed Street, listen, if you didn't go listen to Connor Daly talk about his Daytona car, his Daytona experience in vivid detail, do yourself a favor and go to last week's Speed Street and just sit back and enjoy. Holy crap, that thing. Yeah. It is amazing. And then he had Frankie Muniz on. Is that his last name?
Yeah,
Muniz. Yeah. And that was a good interview. So anyway, and they got Jimmy Johnson on this week.
Yep, Jimmy Johnson. So Speed Street is going to be great too, especially as we get closer and closer to the month of May for Indianapolis 500. You're definitely going to want to be tuned in as those guys talk more and more in detail preparing for that week or that month. Anyhow, thank y'all, and we'll see you tomorrow.
All right.